And what's happening before that light bulb moment is like frustration, right? Your mind is stretching. You can feel yourself learning something new. I remember the moment music theory made sense to me.
Yeah.
I was reading it every day for probably months, looking at just a bunch of numbers and like, okay, how are chords built? It doesn't make sense. And then all of a sudden it did make sense. And that shift that happened for me, once it made sense, I instantly knew how to play piano, which I wasn't studying at all.
Yeah.
But because I now understand the relationships to notes, I can just play, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so what we're unlocking for people is the ability to play, to get in the flow. We're loading in not just, well, here's where to put your fingers, right? It's here's why those go there and how those notes relate to each other. And I know it's not going to make sense yet, but if we keep working on this, eventually it will. And then this whole thing is going to be unlocked. And not only can you enjoy working on something on your own, you can collaborate with other people and it's going to be great.
Welcome to the Culture Goodr podcast with Stephen Leese and Shaun. This podcast is a behind-the-shades look at creating and changing culture inside of goodr sunglasses. You can live with the status quo, you can challenge the status quo, or you can do what we do at goodr and status the quo challenge.
Hey, Shaun, if you want somebody to be great at something, what do you do?
Teach them how to be great at it.
Ooh, how do we do that here?
We have a learning and development team so that we are teaching people what they need to develop.
Oh, great. Let's talk about it.
Cool. All right.
So you run our learning and development team.
Yep.
Called the Goodr U.
Correct.
Tell us about the team.
Well, it's brand new as of this year. Yeah. This is a thing that has evolved over time. We used to be the Ministry of Culture, which is like very vague and, sort of nondescript. But we were teaching certain things. And that was like, what do we expect as you join this company? What's important to know to thrive in our culture? I think at first we had week one, our onboarding, right? That was so dialed. You're coming in, you learn the brand, you learn maybe your Enneagram type, how do these meetings work, and then it's kind of like you're off on your way a little bit. We got a little bit of learning up front and then peppering it throughout. And now we're looking at how do we teach absolutely everything that we expect so that people can meet those expectations and thrive in their role at goodr. So just a quick list of things we might teach is like meetings, presentations, fundamentals, Slack, Google Suite, media training, copywriting, productivity, leadership, our ecosystem, learning more about our product. For sure, your Enneagram type, right? Clearing, feedback, values, AMP, TWC, goodr stock, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Right? What was the pivot point or, I'm trying to remember where we were like, hey, we need to do this we need a major focus on this. Do you remember what the pivot point was?
That's a good question. I think as it relates to mastery, right? We have AMP, Autonomy, Mastery, Purpose. We were like, what is mastery? At first it was kind of like, oh, if you want to learn, get better with Photoshop, go take a class on Photoshop, that kind of thing. And then we made culture one of our strategic anchors, right? So if we have product, marketing, culture, how are we supporting that, right? Through Dare to Lead, we found our values, we found supportive and slippery behaviors, and that was kind of the beginning of defining what do we mean when we set a certain expectation? What do we mean by this behavior? What does it mean to live into it or not, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of like the seed of it, and then from that it grew and we shifted into, pillars and fundamentals and all this.
As you're talking, I'm like, oh, well, I know that actually when we decided to do it, it was, when you have a smaller company, developing resources to have a full-time learning and development team is not really feasible.
It's not a thing.
I would actually challenge, in hindsight, I think I would rethink that. I didn't make it feasible. In hindsight, if I knew what I know now, I probably would have made it more of a focus earlier because you realize the investment of having good people and even the smartest people, myself, we need help, we need support.
Yeah.
But I think it's common that a lot of young companies don't have this at first. And for us, we did a really good job of having certain structures like a quarterly review and teaching the things that you just went through. But in the fall of 2021 is when I decided for us to move from a bunch of flocks to our herds and our ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, teams kind of came up with hey, as we evolve my department, here's where I see the need for. And that's when Nicole's like, hey, we need to have a full-on learning and development team that takes over not only AMP, all of this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was the seed, but that was the end of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you officially kind of came into your role in early 2022, correct?
This one?
Yeah.
2022.
Or the Ministry of Culture flock leader?
Yeah, 22.
And then, over the course of the year, it was like, oh, there was kind of a bunch of stuff. And we realized like, oh, we need to hone this focus and make it learning development. And then, we hired more people over the team, hired Sam, who's an ex-teacher, and like really decided, okay, this is a focus. And when you name something Good or You, it becomes very clear what they do, which I think actually is a huge power.
Oh man, that helped so much. Yeah. In fact, I remember Hancy in the meeting, we were doing a working session. We're like, okay, what is this? And she's like, it's like it's like Goodr University. Good or You. There you go. I was like, well, there it is.
It is. So many of our names come from that fun type of like just off the cuff. It's actually when people are struggling, I've actually been struggling to name stuff at times, and I'm like, I wish it would just come up like that.
Yeah, right.
Well, what I think is really funny is since we kind of announced this, we gave resources, the amount of things that now come out of the woodwork of like, nope, need a class for that is large.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And some of it is like, well, we have these expectations, right? Basic stuff, professionalism. We start and end meetings on time, but that needs to be taught and reinforced, right?
Yeah.
And the more intentional we are about it, the better people can meet those expectations, from something small like that to all the way to what does it mean to really kick ass at a presentation, tell a great story, bring insights to a meeting, not just data.
Yeah.
Right. So all these things need to be taught. And I think that was the big shift for us, is realizing we've given a lot of information, but we haven't done a lot of teaching of like, here's how to use this, go play around on the job and mess up and fail. And then we'll continue to hone that skill. Right.
Yeah. Will you talk about kind of the shift that happened when we, brought in Sam, who's a former teacher who actually knows curriculum and how to teach programs, like that shift. And then I think even just give everybody her first 4 months.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Okay. So before we brought a teacher on, I was trying to set out, okay, here's where we're going. Here's what the vision is. I've got an idea of how we're going to score this, rubrics. And I had a very much like, my mindset is so high level, I'm not seeing all the details. And then everyone who experiences contact with one of my plans is like, what about this? What about that? What about this other thing? How do we grade this? And I'm like, we'll figure it out. And we're figuring it out as we go, right?
Yeah.
And that was like most of the questions I get, all of the trouble I was running into came from the lack of ability for me to take my thinking from here all the way through down to there in like real time, more or less, or ahead of time.
Yeah.
So that we could shoot something out there and like know more or less where it's going to land. When we brought Sam on board, she went through all that kind of thinking and planning and producing an end product so fast that we would make a change and she'd be like, oh no, I have to change this and that and the other thing. I was like, what do you mean? How, like, we just started talking about this. She would like show me a plan and it's complete.
Yeah.
Totally complete. All the way down to like the grading rubric and how the scores and points work. I'm like, oh, so you actually know how to do this. Great. This is going to be really good.
And I think that we right away, like, hey, company mastery, let's teach people, kind of put her on, hey, we're focusing on these three things: communication, professionalism, vision. We'd already done communication in T1, but professionalism, it was like, all right, we got to spin this up quickly.
Yeah.
And basically, like, it feels like that. I am aware she put an insane amount of work into it. It was like, hey, for the company, we're going to work on attitude, then organization, the details. Here's the things we're going to do. Here's how we're going to count it. It completely, for me, I was like, this is what we've always needed that didn't know existed.
Yep.
I think that's profoundly changed how we look at learning and development.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And even like it goes all the way back to her interview because she showed up so dialed to that thing. The presentation, like we always have people do like a little test of like, hey, this is what your job might be like. Let's see if you really want to do this. So the presentation she brought was so well thought out. At one point we're like, so we could probably just do this,
we just do
right?
This?
Yeah. She's like, well, yeah, but that was one of my questions. They're like, yep, cool, great. So having someone with the kind of mind and experience to be able to craft that kind of plan and then roll it out with such clarity. Like every week, everyone gets a Slack from her. Hey, here's what we're up to this week. Fill out this slide, read this article, listen to this podcast. You're going to meet in this group with these people at this time in this place.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. Anything that I was like inadvertently causing anxiety with in my, larger plans from the days past were like so dialed and so well thought out that's not even the challenge anymore. Now it's like there's natural points to gather feedback and make those little shifts as we go, which I think was another change too. Instead of going the whole trimester on one big thing, Sam broke it up into modules. So we have 5 weeks of a module. We're going to test, see how that goes, take the lessons, carry them forward to the next 5 weeks, next 5 weeks. So the amount of agility built in there is insane. Yeah. And we're already seeing the benefits.
It's yet another example of, when you first start a company, hire a lot of jack of all trades, smart people, and then you're like, oh, we need experts. And you're like, oh, wow, oh, this is what happens when you get somebody who's actually taught before. That's wild.
Yeah, cool.
Wild.
Right?
I mean, I actually think that, I think Sam, she's probably just performed too high. I'm like, well, and I mean, now you just have a high expectation.
Exactly.
Like, you fucked yourself in this.
Set the bar way too high. Coming out of the gate.
I saw it, and then I teach a storytelling workshop, and I was like, cool, Sam, I'm gonna need you to be my TA because you got to help me out. Like the amount of inefficiencies in this is probably staggering, and so so the work is now just piling up.
Yeah, I think we may have, that's a perfect analogy. I think we've had similar experiences, right? You put this together, it's very well thought out. You included a lot of coaching, tons of great content. And you ran it a couple times. How did you experience whatever she has done coming in and
right now she's very she's in the discovery phase of we spun it up quick. I didn't have time to sit down with her and be like, hey, we want to do this in a month. Can you spin it up? It was like, we're doing this.
It's happening now, yeah.
Yeah, so, but I'll say certain things like she's, I'm really excited to see where it goes. There's just a level of detail and follow through that is existing. So anyway, to answer your question, she's clearly just like cleaning up my mess as we go. Mm-hmm. And I have the utmost faith it's going to be like way more dialed and streamlined like as we move forward. So we're going into this. It wasn't a, hey, directive, make this better. It was like, hey, I'm doing this. Can you help support me along the way, knowing coming out of it, the next time I need a better system.
Yeah.
And so that is going, and like, this is a lot of people, this happens where I don't even quite know how much work they're doing to make me look better. I'm aware it's a lot though.
Yeah, right? Well, I think that's kind of the arc, right, Stephen? So at first, you said it perfectly. Jack of all trades, everyone's doing their best with a lot of things, and it works at that time, right? When you kind of have that level of staffing, you have that same level of need. There's not as much message repeat that has to happen because people are so plugged into all the different things. But then as we grow and everyone's skill sets kind of silo out a little bit and become a little bit more specialized, we need to be more specialized at teaching what we expect and how to follow through.
Yeah. I think the big level of importance here is, we are all, I think myself as a constant teacher, but in the context of a storytelling workshop, I'm zooming out and I'm zooming in. I'm like working on the business. I'm like, all right, cool. Now I got to zoom in and help people learn. Sam is like very much always in that mindset of like, all right, how is this going to be learned? What's the system? What's the process to get people there? And I can feel the clunkiness, right? Like I can feel like the unpolished as I'm kind of pulling out and pulling in. Mm-hmm. And so there's also just there's just a huge need for somebody like this to be their focus. That's also something that I've just noticed.
Yeah, totally. So just thinking about, the way that we provided support over time as we've grown, now we're here, we've got Sam, who knows what comes next. That feels really good to have someone who's so expert, like to pass these things through to make sure they're as dialed as they can be. At each stage of our growth, can you give a sense of kind of like, well, what were the things that we needed to message repeat and how were we going about doing that?
Man, it's interesting. I think that, all right, stage of our growth, I always just believe leading by example and hiring people to lead by example. So I think that is first and foremost. And if you have the people that aren't leading by example or aren't being assholes and are constantly delivering sloppy work, you need to get them out immediately.
Yep.
Because that is the poison pill.
For sure.
In early 2020, we really aligned on our core values. Late 18, we aligned on our core values, started working through that. And then inside of early 2020, we aligned on our strategic anchors, our mission. And from there, we started doing, I'm a big message repeat person. So at the top of every staff meeting, we have our mission, our values, what we're focused on. So that is just a thing that I believe every company could do, because like that is just a small IV drip of education.
Mm-hmm.
When you do quarterly reviews, people, you create space for people to level up. Then we got better onboarding. Along the way though, we've kind of like, all right, what do we believe in? GTD, which we're now doing to done. That was like the first real thing. That was 2018, spring of 2018, when we had Mike Williams come in and teach everybody that, I believe it was a goodr stock.
Yeah.
That was the first thing. And for me, I grew up like GTD is a big part of who I am. I believe in organization. And so that was like the first thing that we taught everybody. And certain people like latched onto it and loved it, right? Hansi into it. Other people, it probably went in one ear and right out the other, right? And so I think you've probably experienced this. A lot of the stuff here we've taught people, the rate in which it absorbs is going to be, is I think kind of the issue that we're seeing. So I don't know, it's not a clean answer. So GTD was like the first major thing. And then we kind of just added things along the way. Doing to done, a book club there was probably one of the next ones from like an actual content standpoint. It wasn't just, we had our review system, but that wasn't like a learning development. That was just a system.
Right.
And then we did Enneagram. And, we've done things over time, but we really kind of piecemealed it. And we would do, a book club here, a book club there. Maybe we had a goodr stock where we taught something. But we've never done the work, and we're doing the work now of, hey, when do people fall down at goodr? This is a ramble, so I apologize. The thing that we realized early, I think that after GTD was feedback. That was probably the thing that we probably started beating into the ground, because at the core realized, hey, if people are good at communicating, then that's going to solve a lot of problems. So that has been the constant. We've obviously evolved that over time. But I think the thing we're running in now is, the bigger we get, how do you simplify more? Mm-hmm. What I'm really interested in, this is the question I'm going to pose to you, is what are the 3 biggest things that we need everybody, we need to have a resource for everybody to learn right now?
Yeah. Well, so
let's take communication off the table.
Okay. I want to kind of like build up to that, because I really love how you describe that, Stephen. So the first, we've called this goodr OS, right? It's our operating system.
Yeah.
The first program installed on goodr OS is an organizational system.
Yeah.
Right. It's like a productivity.
Yeah. GTD
flow,
project management.
Yep. Okay, great. So that's the first thing, is like, hey, we need shared language and shared strategies around being productive people and managing our projects, right? Loaded that up. Communication, I don't know how early you got Slack involved instead of email.
Super early.
Pretty much right away, right?
Right away,
so, okay, this is how we communicate. This is how we stay organized. Then the addition of a focus on giving each other feedback, even a way we brought the clearing exercise in, which is like a skillful way to communicate something that's difficult to say or hear. And that is so important, because if you don't address how we're speaking to each other, we end up talking about each other. Yeah. And then there's like gossip and backstabbing, back-channeling, and weird bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? Don't want that. That's poisoning the well. So right away, you're starting to protect what we want to thrive by saying, okay, we agree that if we find that we're speaking about each other, we're going to talk to each other, and we're going to use this really skillful format to do it, right? We're communicating through these channels. We're organizing ourselves in these ways. Then from that, I think maybe one of the next things was like the AMP system. Mm-hmm. That's like, okay, now we have quarterly reviews. We're introducing checkpoints for our progress, right?
Yeah.
So that is like an addition to the system. Then there's like various levels of self-awareness, right? Enneagram is a thing. It's a thing I can learn about myself and others and connect through those different inputs, I guess. And then Dare to Lead, which is more what do we value? How do we communicate? How do we lead by example? So all of it is kind of like we're building how do people navigate change together and get things done without stepping on each other's toes too much.
Yeah.
So I think from here, the work just continues. It's like message repeating. What are our shared expectations? What does it feel like to work here? What do we want it to feel like to work here? And how can you contribute to keeping it that way, or contribute, bringing your authentic self into that equation?
The one thing that just occurred to me while you're talking that we obviously were going to bring up is the movement to a year-long onboarding.
Yeah.
And I think this has been a slow build where we leveled up our onboarding over time, and we is now a 3 months. But the realization of what you're talking about is we have goodr as a language, right? It's an operating system.
Yeah.
And teaching somebody how to speak a language in 3 months is never going to happen.
Nope.
And we kind of realized, like, hey, what if we looked at onboarding as a 12-month journey? And hey, obviously there's like the brand stuff at the beginning that's really important, but then really breaking it apart and teaching people the right way over a long amount of time so that we can give people the highest, chance for success.
Yeah. Yeah.
When do we start that?
So officially, I think it's going to be a 2024 thing.
Okay.
But the reason is because we need to build such a comprehensive plan. We hire, I think, 4 or 5 different classes a year.
Yeah.
Right? So everyone comes in at different times, and that means their year-long calendar starts at a different time.
Yeah.
So it's all asynchronous stuff. And we need to really intentionally stack it all so that your first week is super brand focused. Everything you need to know, all this kind of shared language about the brand and how we operate, that gets loaded in early. Then week 2 is systems. Okay, what are the systems you need to thrive and not only survive, but thrive here, right? How do we communicate with each other across teams? How do you stay organized as a person? And then we introduce the fundamentals, right, at a very high level. So then it's like professionalism, communication, vision, all these things. How do they play into everything you've learned so far? And then continually message repeating everything that has like made the canon, so to speak, that's a part of goodr OS over time, so that it's not only building understanding, but building skills and giving them a chance to like practice them and learn as they go. So the ultimate goal is, right, this is a brand new thing. So the ultimate goal is to have a 12-month plan that can start in 24, but start changing it now so that we're building our way there all the rest of this year.
Yeah, there's the obvious stuff that people need to learn in a company, but I think the things that I'm more interested in are the small things, like goodr stock, our trimester summit. Hey, yeah, is there a party? But like what is that about? And teaching the origin, how it's about connection and how to engage in that week where, you shouldn't be sitting on your computer answering Slack in the corner. That is unacceptable.
Right.
But that's one of those things that like, are we teaching that? There's so many of those that we need to make sure that we teach people so they can understand. And I'm really excited for this to kick off and get going.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. And there's so much in there that's like, expectations or resentments waiting to happen, or somebody can't meet an expectation that wasn't set, right? So that means it's our responsibility to teach people what we expect so that they can really jump in and do their best to be their most authentic self and also participating in goodr and reinforcing our culture, right? If we didn't say, hey, not only are you not supposed to be on Slack, no one is supposed to be on Slack, so close your computer and go connect with people. People might think, oh, there's a party going on over there, but I feel like I need to be working right now, right?
Yeah.
So shifting the expectation for everyone across the board to create that space intentionally so that we can all move into it together.
Do you have a sense of how we're going to break this out yet?
Yeah, we've been mapping it out over the past couple of weeks. But like I said, the high level stuff, right? Load in the brand basics, load in the systems, start with the fundamentals. There's a number of, just like we call them level 0 things, like you got to sign your HR paperwork and, get your computer and all that. That stuff can't change.
What's like the black belt stuff that we're teaching in like months 10, 11, 12? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah. I mean, so the feedback fundamentals are always important, but those, instead of being like, here's this format for clearing, use it or don't use it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we're building videos, multiple opportunities to try it live, to do peer-based learning, on-the-job learning. So how do we level it up from, okay, you have the information, you have the know-how, you have the practice, do you know how to practice? How do you put that all in motion? And then so even things that are like, oh, this person's a great presenter or not. Well, they walked in the door like that, but how do we get them to be a goodr presenter? That means meeting certain criteria, thinking about things in certain ways, crafting stories and slides. So we can get the basics in front of you, but then it's going to take a long time to really make it feel like this is baked in. You got pro level skills here.
Yeah. Let me ask you another question. one thing that I've heard in the past and it makes my skin crawl, and I've talked about this with other people, is, you can teach people things all you want and offer classes, but people have to want to learn and do the work. And a common thing that I've heard is, somebody's dropping the ball and they're missing next actions. They're like, oh yeah, I got to get my GTD practice down. I got to do that. And I don't like that. It's like, no, how do we, in doing this work, how do we still hold people accountable and not just like, you know what, put them in another goodr class? Because that's a real thing that I've experienced. I'm sure you've heard it too.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Absolutely. Well, so we're working on a system level support for that, I should say. That's like a part of AMP, right? So living into the fundamentals and being able to ensure that coaching conversations are happening around that kind of thing, and like building it into our system. Because if there's no checkpoint for it, it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
we can't tell if it's on track or off. So I think that's the basic level, is like, how do we check in on what we are expecting? So building that into that. And then also there's like in that like exact case, right? There's a competing priority going on there. We need to coach our leaders to be able to look into that with that person and find out what's going on. So that there's not just that infinite, I'm aware of it, so it's cool kind of thing, right? Like, oh no, I know my system's bad. And so we let people slide on that for a while, but it shouldn't be too long. Right? It needs to be like, okay, no, what's really going on here? And that, I think, is a shift in the way that we do our leadership onboarding, right? Which is also we had like Flock Leader 101, which is essentially, here's a lot of information, to like, we're going tandem jumping, right? The first few times, 20, 30 times you go skydiving, you jump tandem, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with our leaders. We need to bring our more experienced leaders, pairing them up with the newer folks and saying, hey, here's how you coach someone through something like this. Here's how you look into this challenge and help them turn this around.
So, future state, I think that a meeting is a really good one to look through the lens of, because it's pretty simple contextually, right? Where for our listeners out there, goodr meetings start on time. They start on time, they end on time.
Yeah.
And there's a purpose, X, Y, and Z. I think that's always a message repeat, but somebody starts here, they're late to a meeting. The first time, like, just to be clear, you're not late to a meeting, right? It's really it's something that people can tactically understand and they get. And if somebody is just consistently late to a meeting, like, they're just going to lose their job here.
Right.
It's a real thing.
It's such a basic, you've got to do it.
So that one's basic that we now have learned. It is ingrained in our culture. But the more complex the thing gets, the harder it gets. Now, somebody goes through this, all right, they've learned, doing to done, and got it. They know how to do it. And then they use that excuse. Is the responsibility leader to be like, all right, just to be clear, I know you've learned how to do it because you passed the class. If this happens again, you don't have a job. Like what? Because hey, the reason I compare this to is, meetings are fundamentally, we understand them, right? We know how to be on time.
Yeah.
There's no arguing, were you on time or were you not on time?
Right.
And I am late to meetings. Like, people are late to meetings. It is okay.
It does happen.
It does happen. Yeah. But when you're late to a meeting here, you first of all, you walk in urgently and you say, I am really sorry.
Yeah.
Because it happens. So what is your take on that? Like, as we do this, how do we, put the rubber stamp on, like, you are now accountable to do this thing? Stamp.
Well, I think the first thing is, we've never looked at teaching this completely.
Yeah.
Right. We were like, 2-day workshop, doing to done. Here's everything you need to know about the system. You got this. It's your system, set up and go, right? Maybe there's one check-in a month later. And that is not providing the kind of scaffolding that this thing needs to like really set into someone's world and become a part of their new way of operating, right? Change is hard. Everyone resists it. Can't tell you how many times I've said, like, you need to start using Todoist. You need to be able to put dates on things and put them in your own way later. Hear me now, believe me later, right? And they're like, no, I like paper to-do lists. And it's like, cool, glad you like that. You need to use Todoist. Otherwise, you're going to be fucked by the time you need it.
Yeah.
Right? So what we're going to do is not only teach the system, but then for the first, I think it's like 10 weeks, you have a guided weekly review with your entire onboarding class. We all do it together.
Yeah.
So we're building these habits over time so that it's like, this is just how I do it. By the time I know how to do it, it's because I'm doing it all the time.
And so at that point, there is no excuse.
Correct.
Yeah.
And probably you won't even need an excuse because you'll see bit by bit like what a relief it is to have a dialed system. When you are new anywhere, you're like, cool, I might need that, might not need that, right? Like I remember learning the Dewey Decimal System in the library as a kid, and I was like, I'm not even going to pay attention to this because for sure a better system is coming along, right? But like if you come in here and we're telling you, you need to learn doing to done, and you need to pay attention to when your calendar has a meeting on it, and you need to show up on time. Like you're going to find out pretty quick that is true, right? So because we can control that environment and we can control how well we support people in stepping into it, I think the conditions are ripe for success.
Yeah, it is funny. You kind of realize that also you start, it weeds out, you just have to care. Which is true. Yeah. And so you kind of start being, you're like, oh, this person doesn't even care. There's a lot of things in my life where I'm never going to learn because like, I just don't care.
Right.
That is funny. What's your take on, we talked about this a little bit off mic. I think the other thing that teaching people long-term, to do stuff together, getting repetition is really powerful because you can teach people fundamental skills, but what you really want them to understand is like why they do this and why this is important. And you need that light bulb to go off, even like clicking about how things work. Like my analogy is like, you've taught me how to play ukulele before, and like, I know where to place my hand. Like I can play a song.
Yeah.
It doesn't click, right? Like I don't have the muscle memory. I don't fundamentally understand how it works. Golf, on the other hand, I know the workings of golf. And so, what's your take on like just like the power of getting people to get to that like light? Because there is usually, ideally, if you're learning anything, there is a light bulb moment that we're really working towards.
Right. And what's happening before that light bulb moment is like frustration, right? Your mind is stretching. You can feel yourself learning something new. I remember the moment music theory made sense to me.
Yeah.
I was reading it every day for probably months, looking at just a bunch of numbers and like, okay, how are chords built? It doesn't make sense. And then all of a sudden it did make sense. And that shift that happened for me, once it made sense, I instantly knew how to play piano, which I wasn't studying at all.
Yeah.
But because I now understand the relationships to notes, I can just play, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so what we're unlocking for people is the ability to play, to get in the flow. We're loading in not just, well, here's where to put your fingers, right? It's here's why those go there and how those notes relate to each other. And I know it's not going to make sense yet, but if we keep working on this, eventually it will. And then this whole thing is going to be unlocked. And not only can you enjoy working on something on your own, you can collaborate with other people and it's going to be great.
Yeah. It is like kind of like the dream state you want everybody to get into is like understanding something so they can flow.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's really cool. What do you recommend? Like, all right, we want people at goodr to be great. And so we have this ownership, like, all right, we want people to be good at product management or communication. We need to teach them that ownership. Why do you think a lot of companies don't view it that way?
Ooh, why do they not?
Yeah, because I think
the need to teach something.
I think I hear this a lot. Like it's like, well, I just want good people. I want smart people. I want to hire people who know how to do things. It's like, well, yeah, me too. I want
right.
Yeah, I want a pair of diamond shoes, but I don't have them.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe because it takes work to define what do you want, what do you expect, how does that look? It's much easier to just be like, that's wrong, and be like, okay, cool. Well, I want to do it right.
Yeah.
What does right look like? Right. That takes work and effort, and that's a very much like, if you're willing to invest the time to clarify your expectations, to provide the why behind it, and continuously work helping people go from one step to another, achieving mastery in a skill, whatever it is, then you're going to save not only a ton of time later because things are going right and being done correctly, but a ton of frustration along the way, right?
Yeah.
And also there really is something to knowing myself, all my coworkers, we are all held to the same expectations, and we're all trying to hit those marks and push the bar higher for each other. And that creates a natural sense of camaraderie and bonding. And like it brings something essential to a culture that can't be found in like values and mission statements and things like that, because it's a fundamentally human thing. And so when we introduce ourselves to this system and we all strive for certain things that are maybe a little bit beyond our comfort zone, it creates something new that's really special.
Yeah, what you said there that stuck out to me, which I think we could end on and hand out next actions, is the camaraderie and the being held to the same expectation. I think that that is one of some of the magic here at goodr is everybody's held to a high standard.
Yeah.
Nobody has decided we're working hard to create the right tools, but there is a magic when you look around and you're like, yes, everybody here is working as hard as I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're just like, all right, we want to give people more tools to be able to level up, fill blind spots, live like, full work and home lives.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's like the opposite, or maybe it's the broken windows theory, right? If a window in a building gets broken and it doesn't get fixed, whoever broke it is like, oh, nobody cares about this building, and then more and more windows get broken, right?
Yeah.
But if you fix it, then it's like, oh, okay, nope, this isn't the place for that, right? And so every time there's a little thing that breaks, we fix it so that we are reinforcing this is the kind of place where we fix things, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so we create that shared environment together. So I think it's like decide what it is that you want to pay attention to. What do you want to become great at as a team? Teach people how to be great at that. Show them, lead by example, right?
Yeah.
This is what, not only am I saying it, but I'm doing it. I'm showing you how to do it. We're learning together. We're making it okay to make mistakes because we're human. So that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then provide checkpoints along the way. Like we have AMP as one. We have one-on-one meetings with all up, down, and all around along the way. We're looking at those same things. And then I think as a company deciding what is it that you want to message repeat so that everyone has that loaded into their brain, right? The things that we read at the beginning of our weekly all company meetings, it's probably like, oh yeah, cool. Oh, that's neat. All right, great. I might be able to remember that. And now I could just tell you it.
Yeah.
Right. So it takes time to load that stuff in and recognizing and acknowledging that it does take time to learn things. You can't just tell someone something once and then be like, I set that expectation. It's got to happen from here on out. Right. It's like, I don't expect that to stick for a while.
Right on. You did next actions or mine?
I feel like maybe that was mine.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think for everybody out there like trying to stand up some learning development in teams or companies, one, if you have a quarterly review, that is the linchpin, right?
Yep.
That regular system is everything should work off that. Next, detailed onboarding is really, really important.
Yeah.
And then, man, if you don't have the resources to stand up your own learning development team, which you don't, start picking one thing at a time that is the most important. Use a defined system, so something like doing to done, that there's experts to do it, and you need to teach it consistently over a long period of time and not let people slide.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then you just take something else and you do that. And that is really what we've done over the past 8 years.
Perfect. It's shared language, shared strategy. You're building both.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks,
Cool.
y'all.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening. Until next time, be excellent to each other.
Thanks for listening to the Culture Goodr podcast. To submit questions for the podcast, learn more about our culture, and learn how you can status the quote challenge, head over to goodr.com/culture. And don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you're listening, including on YouTube, where you can now watch all of our new episodes. Who knows? You might even catch a glimpse of Carl at our headquarters if he's not already passed out at the tiki bar from all the margaritas.